Okay, give me one moment. Excellent, thank you. Welcome all. Welcome to Above the Book. Today we are interviewing with Grumpy, Callie, and Signal Linden in our continuing segment, What's Up at the Lab. Grumpy Linden is the Senior Vice President of Product and Engineering at Linden Lab. She stands at the forefront of Second Life's transformations with a compelling mix of technical expertise and psychological insight from her studies at Johns Hopkins University. She's been pivotal to the platform's growth since 2009. Her leadership focuses on empowerment and solving complex challenges, all to foster a vibrant environment and evolve the virtual experience. Grumpy's approach combines strategic vision with a deep commitment to the digital world's future and its inhabitants. Also joining us is Callie Linden, Director of Engineering at Linden Lab, who commands an elite trio of teams dedicated to refining Second Life's user experiences. She oversees the development of key resident-facing web properties and vital internal APIs, including the marketplace, web search, Linden Homes, and much more, ensuring a secure, dynamic environment for all of our users. Callie's leadership extends beyond technical innovation. She's a passionate mentor in STEAM, inspiring future creators with projects from visual novels to robots. Additionally, as a co-founder of a nonprofit, she's guided over 300 individuals in their tech careers. Callie embodies the intersection of technology, creativity, and community, driving Second Life's mission to forge a world of limitless possibilities. Also joining us today is Signal Linden, who is an engineer and recently anointed director of Second Life server and viewer teams. He was attracted to the new media arts and creative aspects of Second Life in 2005 and joined the company in 2015 after working at Amazon, Career Builder, and the Grand Rapids Public Library System. He believes in virtual worlds that can push the envelope of experience and is a strong proponent of open source software and development. I'd like to thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so I've got a whole raft of questions, and I know you guys sent over a couple of things that we can start to talk about. Obviously, as an education conference, one of the things that we're very focused on is how a lot of the creator tools, the marketplace, a lot of these things can be leveraged for the development of curriculum, the development of student and learner-centric programs inside this environment. And there's a lot of overlap between some of the topics that we had sort of discussed a little bit before we came on here today and where some of the technical aspects of some of these things are going. So a lot of my questions are going to sort of have two parts to them. One is going to be, okay, what's really cool with the technology that you guys are doing, right? And then the second one is, how can we as educators leverage that in order to really create better curriculums faster, in less time, with less stress, all of those, good types of things. And so I wanted to start off with a lot of the creator tools, and specifically you had 4 items that we were talking about previously in terms of mobile, physical-based rendering, graphic library, transmission format hierarchies, and scripting. Right, so let's actually start with those, and what I'd like to actually start off with is the GLTF hierarchies, the graphic library transmission format hierarchies, because that to me seems to be one of the more overarching game changers with inside Second Life. I could be wrong, but I was hoping you guys could explain a little bit more in terms of where the lab is going with that.
Yeah, I think I would be happy to talk a little bit about that. And Grumpy or Kali, if you want to jump in, feel free to. Um, so for a long time, Second Life has had support for mesh, but we've used this somewhat antiquated format called Collada. Um, that is still, an open standard, which was great for folks to get in to be able to author 3D content and upload it to Second Life. So you could use open source software like Blender to create content, as well as proprietary tools like Maya. However, Mesh was introduced quite a while ago, and the industry has moved on a little bit. A lot of people are using different formats for basically exchanging their 3D content, and GLTF has become kind of this very popular format that almost everybody uses. We'd like to make it really simple for people to upload content to Second Life. And so you can think that, if you're like a student that's like working on 3D models, or, just wants to make content in Second Life, we want to make it really simple for you to be able to put your content in a world. And so the ultimate goal is to have basically drag and drop functionality with GLTF, where you can take build content or source it from someplace like Sketchfab and be able to, as long as you have the license for it, be able to drag and drop it into Second Life and have it appear in a world. In order for that to happen, we have to implement basically like all these different standards. GLTF is this large, sprawling format, and right now we've started with physics-based rendering, PBR, which we released last year, and that was a huge part. We had to rework big elements of our rendering pipeline, but it allows us to be able to display content, based on physics-based parameters, right? More than just this simplified model of using specular maps to represent reflection. And
Right.
so, yeah.
So for those people that don't know, what is physical-based rendering, and what is the actual implication of it? Just simply because, keep in mind, you're talking with a group of educators, right? I know what you're talking about, right? But it's I think everybody here wants to have a good understanding of what does that actually mean to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, so physics-based rendering, I think the name, if you think about it, does a pretty good job of explaining what it does, as long as you kind of walk through what it means. So rather than being based around, whether something like is shiny or not, or some like simplified model of the attributes of a material, it's based on the physical properties that can be measured. So you can go out and measure things in world, and then those properties are what kind of define. It's a more accurate representation of material, basically tied to the real world. And so what we can do with that is that we can more accurately represent like metallic objects, or objects that are matte, um, have different and better, types of reflection. And ultimately, what you have is a material system which can work really well with the software that people are using these days. There's a lot of software like Substance Painter, Blender, which are all kind of coalescing around using physics-based rendering pipelines, and that will allow people to more easily make content for Second Life.
So how is that going to change the content creation aspect? Because obviously, if you go into the marketplace right at the moment, there's a vast cacophony of different things, from everything from objects that were created 15, 16 years ago to the BOM and clothing for mesh for mesh avatars and what have you, right? So
Yeah, What I think we're going to be putting together is, Second Life, the formats that we've supported up until now were a little bit esoteric. You can still upload fantastic, amazing content in Second Life. Like, look around us. People have done amazing things with Mesh and Collada, with normal and specular maps, and kind of the material system that was put in place early in the 2010s. But we would like to make it really easy. So like sometimes you think about Second Life, and when you have to make content for it, you might have to go to our wiki and read all these pages about how to upload content, animations, things like that. We'd like to make it a lot simpler so that you can basically take content that comes out of the authoring tools or websites and drag and drop it into Second Life and for it to pop appear in the world. So I think that will be the biggest thing that we're trying to get to. Most important thing for people making content.
Right. So are there a number of, because I was going through some of the materials in terms of how you go about creating BPR type objects, and obviously it's one, well, it's more than one step beyond doing mesh based objects, right? And so for a number of people to be able to create their own content, it's becoming more and more complex as we go along, and certainly there's advantages with that in terms of the render in world, right? But I mean, how sorry, I'm trying to collect my thoughts here. How is that actually going to help out educators in terms of developing content when the pool of people that are creating content using these new creator tools are still so limited, and the skill set required to do these particular types of things are maybe a bit beyond the average user?
I think the thing that will really help is that by modernizing the formats that Second Life supports, um, educators can rely on students being able to use the documentation that's available, for tools and systems outside of Second Life, because we'll be using the same formats that modern platforms are using by updating Second Life to be able to support things like GLTF and PBR materials. You should be able to look at content, and this is one of the goals that the engineers working on physics-based rendering in Second Life have, is that you should be able to look at an object that's inside of, for example, Substance Painter, which is a tool used to kind of like do these amazing things where you can paint content and um, apply stencils to it and build the materials for what it looks like. That you should be able to look at that content in Substance Painter and then bring it over into Second Life and for it to look exactly the same. Um, and that means that students should be able to refer to the documentation about working with materials like this plethora of information that's available about making this content, and then they won't have to go through the extra step of figuring out what some type of like archaic format like Collada and doing these extra steps that are specific to Second Life for getting the content imported. They should be able to much more simply be able to bring it into Second Life without knowing about some specific caveats.
Now, I'm assuming that the GLTF hierarchies and our ability to simply import BPR type objects and materials are tied together in terms of one sort of relying on the other type of thing. First of all, that's an assumption on my part. But the second question that I've got to that is that how are you sort of constraining the use of GLTF within those particular spaces? Like, are we talking GLTF just in terms of assisting with importing individual objects, or are you actually looking to extend this to maybe entire scenes at some point down the line?
Yeah, that's the actually really exciting and ambitious goal, is because when people, if you worked in Second Life, you're familiar with these link sets, right? These chairs that we're sitting on are a link set. But we haven't really had like a full hierarchy of objects that could be brought in. And GLTF hierarchy implies, you know, if we want to actually implement in the specification for GLTF and make content compatibility with Second Life really robust, then we need to be able to support having actual supporting the actual hierarchy that's in GLTF objects. So you could have, you know, a parent object and it has all of these child nodes and yeah, the full hierarchy kind of brought in into Second Life.
And is this just simply a one-way type activity, like bringing content external to Second Life into Second Life? Or are we going to have the ability that, you know, as an educator, let's say you develop a curriculum with a particular setup, like a scene associated with that, the ability to be able to export that or to be able to share that with other educators with it, either with inside Second Life or, you know, the holy grail for a lot of educators is to be able to take something that they've developed here and to be able to port it over to Kitely or OpenSim or a number of other platforms. Like if we're talking about that type of, like, breaking down those garden walls that Second Life has always sort of been surrounded by.
Yeah, I think that the content interoperability will be a lot better with GLTF because you'll be able to represent a lot more with a GLTF file than you can right now. And so you could have the source file, bring it over into Second Life or into an OpenSim grid. In terms of export functionality, I'm not actually sure yet. I don't think we know enough about the use cases there and the permissions to really understand what we might be offering in terms of being able to export anything.
Well, let me introduce you to this wide range of people in front of you that have 100 different use cases for this type of stuff. Yeah, because I mean, like, educators are all about sharing their content, about sharing what it is that they do. They're all about collaborating, right? And especially, like, one of the challenges I know, like, when you want to try to export certain things out of Second Life, obviously you have to be the full owner of that particular property, but in a lot of cases, you know, and this build that we're in here right at the moment is a good example of this. These environments were put together by a dozen people, right, in terms of what we have here. And each one of our conference builds that we do is there's a lot of people that contribute to each one. If we wanted to package this up and share it with somebody else, it becomes very difficult if everything has to be under the same owner. So this is why I was saying, I mean, is there going to be more, eventually will there be more latitude with regards to being able to share content? I realize that's a bit of a loaded question.
Yeah, I mean, like, so one thing that we're interested in looking at is Creative Commons licensing and being able to attribute Creative Commons licensing to objects in Second Life. It gets really interesting when you want to export content because you have to weigh the interests of the people that are making and selling content in Second Life, right? You know, if you can export something and you need to have the license to do so. But I do think the GLTF format support and, you know, we want to be able to have more interoperability with tools, and that includes being able to move content around by supporting these more common formats that have more features.
Right. Okay. One of the things that you guys had on the list that you said that you wanted to talk about was changes, or I'm assuming changes with regards to scripting, and new things that are going to be happening with scripting coming forward. I believe GTLF uses a lot of JSON code in the background in terms of how it transfers information back and forth. Is there a potential that we're going to see more JSON base coding coming into these environments, or?
Uh, yeah, possibly. The we have
Well,
been
I realize it's not a coding; it's a structure, but
yeah, and so with regards to scripting, we've been putting a lot of effort into adding new scripting functionality. Um, we've added more LSL functions to Second Life in the last year or two than the last 5 years. And a lot of these things have been the things that scripters have been asking for a long time, like the ability to um, search through a list in different ways and use MD5 hash digests and do a bunch of fundamental things that have been asked about for years. Um, and we've implemented those, and the feedback has been pretty good so far. Um, we're also looking at just generally investing more resources in the scripting. Like so, if you have functionality that you want, like I would love to see um, more ideas. Like we we Second Life has been around a while. That we tend to think there's nothing new underneath the sun, right? Like, oh, someone must have asked for this 10, 20 years ago, and actually they're probably right, but that shouldn't prevent you from asking again, because we might be able to implement it. Um, and so we have this new feedback site, feedback.secondlife.com, with a scripting area in it where you can submit your scripting ideas, vote on which ones you want. And so if there are areas of scripting that educators need more functionality, whether it's doing something like integrating with some type of e-learning system, courseware, or if it's just new functionality for building content, um, you know, go there and please give us your ideas. We would love to hear them and vote on the ones that exist in the system, um, because we're going to be building that out. And you're right, we will need to come up with new functionality to support manipulating GLTF objects in hierarchies. So that's all going to be part of kind of planning that work as we start working on it.
so is this going to imply that we're going to see Second Life becoming more open to uh, other cloud-based technologies, the ability to integrate other APIs and other opportunities to integrate with other virtual environment, well, augmented reality type services that are being offered outside of Second Life?
Yeah, we have been adding functionality that makes it easier to interoperate with APIs, with things outside of Second Life. Um, that the functionality that I really love to see is when someone asks for something that is relatively low level, so it helps the lowest common denominator, um, and so that people can build lots of functionality from that. If you're talking to a scripter, that might be something like we added this new, some new message digests functions which help with working with web APIs. That may be a little esoteric for a lot of folks, but for working with web APIs and working with external sources, like we'd love for Second Life to be able to play really well with web technologies.
You did mention a little bit, potentially a little bit more better integration with other pieces of software, like other LMS type systems. There was something on here at one point called Sloodle, which was a homegrown thing,
it,
like
yeah.
years ago. I'm assuming we're well beyond that at this particular point, but are there certain LMSs that you guys have actually looked into with regards to better integration back and forth, or?
Yeah, I'm familiar with Sloodle. I have not, in terms of contemporary LMSs. Um, I don't know if we've looked into anything specific recently, but if there is functionality in scripting that would help integrating with new systems, yeah, that's what we would love to hear about.
One of the things that we've, I know with inside our user community here that we've asked for a long time has been voice and natural language processing, where we can do voice to text, text to voice with inside this environment. Is there any movement on that? Because this, out of everything that this community's ever asked for, that has, continuously topped the list.
Yeah. Grumpy, was you clearing your throat?
No, go ahead. I just wanted to mention that the timing is perfect.
Yeah.
Because we've just now started publicly talking about some changes that we're making. But Signal, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, like, so it's like kind of crazy timing because we have been actually just sent out a little bit of information about how we are looking to improve our voice systems in Second Life. And voice was introduced in 2007, and it was, it's a pretty exciting time for Second Life, and voice has been kind of the same ever since then. It works okay, but what we would like to explore is use some new technology which will allow us to add functionality to voice, like adding scripted control over voice, or in the future potentially do things like define zones within Second Life where you could have reverb or different audio properties. And I mean, I guess, how technical would you like me to get?
Well, if it was just you and I, we could get very technical, but I know a couple of things. Obviously, we want to sort of eventually get back to the education side of things, but I know things that we've sort of talked about. One of the big things that we've had problems with here is moderator tools with regards to voice, right? So the ability that we can, within a given space, basically say, okay, these are the active speakers and everybody else is, quiet, right? So that you don't have somebody that has an open mic, right? Those particular types of tools are available on all kinds of other different platforms, but not available here, right? And then, like I said, the natural language processing in terms of, voice to text and text to voice, right? Because there's a lot of people within inside the environment here that have difficulty with, especially inside the education field and to a large extent, when you look at what's referred to as Section 508, accessibility, right? A lot of programs that need to be developed have to be developed with accessibility in mind, and it's very difficult to do that when you don't have the voice to text and text to voice options available.
Yeah, that makes sense. Part of the improvements to voice that we're thinking about involves us handling the voice streams, and that means that we would definitely have more ability to do things like add functionality that has live translation, transcription, text to speech and speech to text. Those are definitely a possibility with this new system that we're thinking about building out. That wasn't really an option before.
Right.
Yeah. In order for us to explore this, that we are actually aligned with you completely. That's text to voice, voice to text, translation, scripted voice. All of these things are kind of the future of voice in virtual worlds. We need to be able to take this step first in order to be able to progress. And so they're on our long-term vision, but they're not on our roadmap, because the first thing we have to do is move to WebRTC voice. And hopefully the next time we talk, we'll be like, oh yeah, it's coming in a week. Or it already shipped. How do you like it? But for now, this is the step we're taking, and we look forward to just the improved voice quality. And the next after that will be moderation tools, I believe.
Awesome. Okay. All right. One of the other things that we had on the creator tool side of things before we start switching topics into other areas, mobile apparently is the big thing that you guys are now sort of looking at. I believe the mobile version of Second Life was in alpha a couple of months ago. Is it still in alpha at this point, or?
Yep. Mobile
Yep.
is still in private alpha. And the private alpha is open for all Premium Plus subscribers. And we are getting lots of feedback from the alpha testers who are in the program. We appreciate it very much. And we would love for people to keep signing up. The more feedback we get now, the better the app will be when we're able to expand it to a wider audience.
Okay. Is the where do you see the mobile? Because I was looking at a couple of promo clips for it, and a lot of it seemed to be sort of, okay, I'm at a cafe and I can keep in touch with my friends in Second Life type of thing, which has some applicability, but obviously there's a lot of competition in that space. If all you're doing is providing a fancy way of connecting to, quote unquote friends and family, where do you see that whole aspect of Second Life going in terms of, either for for business, specifically for education, right? Where is the value in that for educators?
This is a great question. There's kind of the immediate roadmap, and then there's the long-term vision. For the immediate roadmap, when we started out, we decided one of the key aspects of Second Life is the way it looks. And it has also been one of the biggest challenges because Second Life is user-generated content. So overcoming this particular hurdle, getting avatars to look right, we're still working on, getting the beautiful scenes to look right, being able to land in this scene that we're in right now, for example, and for everything to show up the way it does on mobile is quite a challenge. And then on top of that, we're starting to build out more and more functionality, whether additional functionality around chat or other core Second Life functions. But ultimately, we see mobile not just as a tool for existing residents, but as a tool for growing the user base, of course. In terms of what people who aren't in Second Life yet are looking for, it's probably very different. It's not as important for them to be able to organize their inventory on their phone as it is to discover the first thing to do in SL, to make the first connection. So that roadmap is where we'll be looking once we get some of the core functionality into the app. At the same time, the move to WebRTC Voice that we were talking about recently allows us to more quickly get voice into the mobile app, and then I'll be able to come to this meeting and attend it from my phone. And your students, if you're just having a lecture in SL, for example, will be able to attend the lecture from their phone. Whether you like that or not, I'm not sure. However, do I think they'll be able to build on mobile? Not for a while. But perhaps there will be other use cases where they will be able to keep in touch with their class in Second Life on their phone. Some functionality will remain bound to the desktop. I don't see creators going full on their mobile devices. I think you'll still need to be on the desktop. You're still going to be exporting and importing files. These are not phone-specific use cases.
Right.
But so much more continuity and immersion where you're no longer just tied to sitting in front of your desktop. Absolutely, there will be object interaction. There already is some object interaction. You can sit in chairs. You can sit in a moving vehicle. The fix for that is coming up in the next release, actually. And there will be additional changes as well. I'm super excited actually about mobile. I have so much fun where I can pull out my phone and go, look, I'm in Second Life.
Cool. What's the roadmap looking for that? Obviously, you said you're in alpha right at the moment. What's the roadmap looking at with regards to more wider spread release? I mean, when are you looking at beta, and then potentially when are you looking at an initial wider scale release?
If I had a penny for every time I get asked this question.
I know, but you got an audience, so I got to take advantage.
I do. I would love to give you a date. We are aiming for a wider scale onboarding of existing residents in the first half of this year. I think that's broad enough. We would love to nail down some dates, but there's a lot of things to figure out. As soon as we go out of alpha, we have to figure out how we're working with the app stores and how we're dealing with various ratings and how we're dealing with Linden dollar balances. And a lot of these things are fairly complex systems in SL. So sit tight. We're pedaling really fast.
Cool. Okay. All right. Well, maybe next year, a lot of this will be on mobile.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, onboarding. You guys want to talk a little bit more about the onboarding process in terms of how that's changing?
Sure. So we started out last year. We kind of redid the join flow. We put out the new center avatars and an avatar customizer flow on the web where you can just choose an avatar, choose shape. It's a mesh avatar. It's kind of a starter, of course. You can get clothes that's look modern, and there's a selection, and you can pick and choose and go in world with this avatar. And our goal was obviously not that necessarily that you're walking around forever with the starter avatar, but that this takes you through some time. You can figure out avatar customization as part of your journey. We are working on some updates to that flow and to the content that's available. But ultimately, we know avatar customization is hard in Second Life. And so what we're working on is the next steps that we need so that once you get in world with that center avatar, you can continue customizing with the same ease of use that you had on the web, where you just clicked on a skirt and it appeared on your avatar. There's some back-end changes that are necessary to make this happen. So this is kind of the long-term vision, is to simplify avatar customization. Obviously, the more you simplify, the more power you take away. So I doubt that with this click-click interface, you'll be able to put together an avatar like Signals. But hopefully, you can put together an avatar like mine.
Oh, sorry, feedback. So I'm going to put you on a little bit of a spot here then. So the Reg API, there's a lot of different groups in the education area that have their own Reg API for bringing students into Second Life. If with all of this planned changes to the onboarding process, is there also a planned upgrade to the Reg API code and other features going to be made available to those that have community portals?
What kind of changes would you like to the Reg API? We're definitely talking about account creation, code upgrades, and some login related upgrades in the foreseeable future. We don't have those pinned down yet, so now would be a great time to hear from you all about what would be helpful in modernizing the Reg API.
Right. Well, I know if I start going down my laundry list, I'm going to get in trouble because I've been told to keep my questions brief and to let you guys talk as much as possible. But there is a list. Absolutely, there is a list. However, it's I think one of the core things with regards to the Reg API is the difficulty that groups have in terms of implementing it. And insofar as the documentation is not exactly the best that's out there, quite often, it's sort of knowledge experts having to share how it is that they've sort of manipulated things in order to get it to work properly. And in the education field, we're good at sharing information. So it's what one person learns, eventually we all learn. But like some of these new things that you have coming out, like the new avatars, being able to integrate that into the Reg APIs, and some of the new features, such as the ability to have certain experiences auto load as soon as somebody comes into a new environment, right? Those are things which I think need to have, for the community groups, need to have a little bit more increased availability in terms of those particular things, because it's interesting to watch the new onboarding process for people coming through the Linden Lab portal, and then you contrast that with what everybody else has, and there's a distinct quality gap between the two. Right. And so that's what I was hoping that you guys could maybe address a little bit, since we're talking about the onboarding process, is whether or not that quality gap is going to become smaller, as we move forward.
I think adding, bringing Reg API to the same level that the current onboarding process has is on our roadmap, and this conference certainly is an opportunity to nudge it. But also, I would like to say that Midori is a fantastic facilitator, and I know she'd be a great person to talk to and share the Reg API wish lists with.
We had talked a little bit about the marketplace. I was wondering if there were other additional changes that were coming to the marketplace.
There are. Thank you for asking. So one of the first things that we're working on with the marketplace is in line with all of our focus on mobile. We're trying to make the marketplace responsive so that you would be able to go marketplace shopping on your tablets or smartphones, or even just so that it shows up better when you're using your in-world browser to view the marketplace. We're also very aware that the search needs some TLC inside the marketplace, and so we are working on that. We'd like to add some more filtering to marketplace search so that you can find things that work with particular bodies. And we'd also starting to talk about additional ways to filter to get to what you really want in the marketplace. But we don't have specific plans for that yet.
Okay. One of the other items that had come up was that I think you guys had mentioned is that currently, and I guess, Signal, this goes back to something that you were talking about before, where you're looking for feedback on new features and functionalities. Right at the moment, the main system that you were using to capture a lot of this information was Jira. But now it looks like you're trying to do a Jira to GitHub conversion. So what is sort of driving that, and will educators be able to sort of be able to feed into that a little bit more readily than maybe how they have in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about that a little bit. Maybe you could step in, Kali, if you wanted to. The original forcing function for getting off of Jira was a change in licensing from Atlassian, where we have hundreds of thousands of people that submit issues to Second Life and have been using Jira. And due to a licensing change, they wanted to charge per person, and that simply wasn't tenable. Something I'm really passionate about is open source software and collaboration with people that want to be able to contribute and share information, you know, with the developers and with staff at Linden Lab. And the viewer being open source made GitHub a really good place to start working and collaborating with contributors to our code. So what we have right now is kind of a model that a few companies have been adopting, where we have a website that Grumpy linked earlier, feedback.secondlife.com, and that's a place to go to search for ideas and discuss ideas, vote on issues and things you believe are important. And it's kind of like, I like to think of it like a primordial pool where we try to find the things that are actually really important and have like the highest return on interest that we could work on. It has a lot of really powerful tools for kind of prioritizing important work and also presenting a high-level roadmap, even to people that aren't very technical. So one of the barriers with Jira was that we had 200,000 issues in Jira, all these projects, multiple public projects exposing tens of thousands of tickets. Was a relatively technical system, which is great for the technical folks. But if you wanted to get in and submit some ideas, or just have a discussion before even maybe you didn't even know if it was a good idea or not, you just wanted to submit an idea, and that's where feedback.secondlife.com may be a better avenue to discuss things. And then we're also using GitHub issues. I like to think of there being kind of like three personas. There are people that just want to submit ideas and talk about bugs and problems, talk about things with one another and staff, and understand what's going on. There are contributors, which are people who may be interested in actually contributing changes to our software. And then there's maintainers, or aka staff. And we're giving more tools for people to be able to put their information in. And GitHub issues is where we think of as that being a place for contributors and maintainers. So the workflow is residents, contributors, even staff like myself will submit ideas to feedback.secondlife.com. People will be able to vote on those, discuss them, figure out whether we actually should work on them. And then if we do like them, bring them over to GitHub issues. And that's where kind of the nuts and bolts will come together, where contributors and maintainers will work on actually executing.
Okay, I think I'm allowed 2 loaded questions, and I'm about to put the second one on the table. So people are going to hate me for this. Not every user carries the same weight. And this community, the education community, actually carries a lot of weight with regards to the number of people that we bring in world, the amount of money that we're spending in world, the amount of time that we're spending in world, the exposure that we give to people that might not have considered Second Life as an alternative with regards to networking and education and doing other projects and what have you. So when you talk about the community is going to be able to vote on these things, right? Is there any consideration given for the fact that certain community groups ideally should have a larger share of voice, even if they don't make up the largest percentage of people that are necessarily going onto that particular platform? I realize that's a very loaded question. Grumpy, we've had this conversation before. You know where I'm coming from, right? So
the voting is just one element of it, right? Like,
okay.
You know, like, so the point I guess I was trying to make is that previously on Jira we had basically disabled voting, and you know, it's one indicator of how, you know, relevant something may be. Of course, people can go on and, you know, do kind of like vote brigades and kind of, you know, bump things up. But we're trying to put together, you know, how much impact does this have, which absolutely includes the people that it'll help. So you're talking about educators, right? Bringing in lots of folks and spending so much time and investing so much resource into Second Life. And that's absolutely, you know, an element to that equation of its return on interest.
Now, I would add on that I agree with you. The educator community does have an outsized impact. And I'll be honest, there's not that many employees at Linden Lab, so not every community actually gets a Midori. The reason that Midori is able to facilitate kind of between the engineering team and the educational community is specifically because we understand and appreciate the value that that the community brings to Second Life and that Second Life brings to education. Right? The reason that we do this isn't because, you know, the paycheck is amazing. The paycheck is nice, but the reason we do this is because we truly believe that Second Life has an outsized impact on the well-being of people who are here. And so for that, we absolutely want to make sure that it really does have this positive impact in the world and that more people can benefit from it.
Oh, that's awesome. By the way, you're never allowed to get rid of Midori. Ever. She has to stay. Right? So you can't give her to us and then take her away at some point. So no, this has been awesome. Was there? I know we also had talked to maybe have an opportunity for Brett to come by, and this is one of the few years he's not been able to come by. Were there any additional things that you guys want to bring up that you want to put in the last couple of minutes here before we wrap up, or?
Unfortunately, Brett is off today, and so there was no way for us to teleport him in. But I know he would have loved to be here, and he shares our passion for Second Life. We had a really long list of topics we would have loved to talk about, and I feel like we've touched on a lot of them, and in particular, you know, some of the key subjects.
Yeah. I mean, I could keep you guys here for 4 hours, but unfortunately, we've only got 2 minutes at this point now. So,
Khalid, anything you want to bring in?
I'm looking forward to hearing from Midori the lists of things that would be super useful to educators, and I'm wondering if we have any educators that try and have students or classrooms act as merchants, if they ever have anybody do sort of like a stock market game, but on the marketplace.
there is one group that I know of that does do that. I think they're with Front Range College. I'm not positive, but yeah, there's probably a couple of groups that do that. But we have, like I said, we're a fairly well networked group here, and so every time you open up the door, we got people that are going to walk through it. So not to worry. There's a lot of feedback coming your way. I'd like to thank all three of you for being here. Grumpy and Callie and Signal. And I'm hoping that we'll get a chance over the next couple of weeks and couple of months to sort of expand on some of these conversations, and that we get a lot more feedback coming your way in terms of some of the use cases and where it will benefit not only um, the education sphere, but also the community as a whole. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure, and I really look forward to doing this every year, even if I don't get to do this every year. Also, I wanted to throw in that internally we kind of had a lot of fun with the theme of mythic origins, and Kali even rewrote her bio completely as a mythic origins bio.
Yeah, I believe we have that up on the website, so people will be able to take a look at that a little bit later.
Thank you
Thank
all
you
for
so
having
much.
us and for being educators. We wouldn't be here today without our teachers either, so thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, and the stream